Hey everyone, welcome back. Today we're diving into something, well, I think we all have some experience with kids and their toys, but
Oh, yeah?
buckle up because this isn't about picking the right educational toy or anything like that. We're going deeper.
Deeper.
Yeah, into how a child's play can actually offer a glimpse into their development and potential.
It's really fascinating, the source material we're exploring today. It challenges, the traditional view of play.
Okay?
It argues that instead of seeing toys as just objects, we should view a child's play space as their own personal,
Just
laboratory.
laboratory.
Yeah, it's where they experiment, test theories, and build crucial skills all through play.
Okay, so not about like predicting a future architect just because they love blocks,
Right.
but understanding how that building process is shaping their brain.
Exactly. And to really understand this, the source kind of breaks down play into 4 dimensions.
Mm.
Think of it like a decoder ring for what's going on in those busy little minds.
Okay.
We'll be exploring each dimension in this deep dive, starting with what the source calls the creator's journey.
Okay, the creator's journey. So not just about kids making art or structures, right?
Yeah.
There's got to be
Yeah.
something deeper going on.
Absolutely. The source points to research from UC Berkeley that found a strong link between spatial play in kids as young as 3.
3.
Yeah, and their later mathematical abilities.
Wow, okay.
This means those seemingly simple acts of building and creating are actually building neural pathways, the ones that underpin problem solving and spatial reasoning skills.
So like my kid who spends hours making elaborate domino runs,
Uh-huh.
they're not just messing around. They're like prepping for a future in engineering maybe.
Not necessarily engineering, but they are strengthening skills that could apply to a variety of fields.
Okay.
The source actually highlights a real-world example of this, a woman named Sarah, who as a child was obsessed with building and demolishing block towers. Her parents, instead of directing her play, just observed and provided her with more blocks and space.
And this hands-off approach paid off.
It did. Sarah went on to become a successful structural engineer.
Wow.
Her passion for spatial exploration naturally guiding her path. Now, I'm not saying every block-loving kid will become an engineer,
Right.
but it does highlight how certain play preferences can hint at a child's strengths.
That's fascinating. Okay, so we've got the creator's journey. What's the next dimension this source dives into?
It's called the storyteller's mind.
Mm.
This is where we see kids using clay to weave narratives, create characters, and essentially rehearse for the complexities of life.
So my daughter turning her stuffed animals into a complex soap opera.
Yeah.
That's not just her being dramatic, it's actually developing important skills.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
The source emphasizes that this type of narrative play is doing much more than entertaining.
Okay.
Research from MIT has actually shown that when children engage in complex pretend play,
Mm-hmm.
they score higher on tests of emotional intelligence later on.
Hmm.
They're essentially building the neural architecture for understanding emotions,
Wow.
both their own and those of others.
Wait, so they're not just playing pretend.
Right.
They're literally wiring their brains for better emotional intelligence.
Yeah,
That's huge. It makes those imaginary worlds seem a lot more important now.
exactly. And what's fascinating is that this type of play also helps them develop language skills
Mm-hmm.
and social understanding. Think about it. They're creating dialogue, negotiating roles, and resolving conflicts within their play scenarios.
It's like they're running their own little social experiment
Right.
every time they play.
Precisely. So, the next time you see your child lost in a world of their own creation, just remember, they're not just goofing off.
Oh, no.
They're engaging in vital work that's shaping their emotional, social, and cognitive development.
Okay, so we've explored the creator, the storyteller. What other hidden talents are these play dimensions revealing?
The third dimension the source dives into is the problem solver's laboratory. This focuses on how children develop strategic thinking through play. We see this a lot in games, puzzles, or any activity where there's a challenge to overcome.
So it's not about winning or losing, but about how they approach the challenge itself.
Exactly. What we want to observe here is their executive function coming into play, how they plan, adapt, and overcome obstacles. It's about their process,
Mhm.
not necessarily the outcome.
So instead of jumping in to show them the right way to solve a puzzle or whatever,
Right.
we should be encouraging them to grapple with it on their own.
That's a great point.
Right.
It can be tempting to step in, but by allowing them to struggle a bit, we're helping them develop those crucial problem-solving skills that will serve them well beyond the playroom.
Yeah, I can see how this dimension is like especially important as they get older and face more complex challenges in school and life.
Absolutely. And the source emphasizes that we shouldn't try to force a particular outcome or problem-solving style. Instead, focus on observing how they approach challenges and what strategies they employ. You might be surprised by their ingenuity.
Okay, so we've got the creator, the storyteller, and the problem solver. I'm guessing the last dimension has something to do with how they interact with others.
You got it. The final dimension the source explores is the social explorer. This is where we see play becoming a stage for understanding social dynamics.
So, watching how they play with others can give us insights into how they perceive relationships and navigate social situations.
Precisely. Think about how they negotiate roles, resolve conflicts, or cooperate on shared goals during play. These interactions offer valuable clues about their developing social intelligence.
It's like they're running their own little society with its own rules and
Right.
hierarchies.
Yeah.
And observing this can help parents understand if a child is like naturally introverted or extroverted.
That's an interesting point, and it might. The source highlights observing patterns of collaboration, conflict resolution, and even the emergence of leadership or follower dynamics.
This is also fascinating. So we've got these four dimensions, but I'm curious, could too much like support stifle a child's independence? Where's that line between like observing and interfering?
That's a great question, and one the source addresses directly. It advocates for a shift from managing their play to becoming a partner in their exploration. We'll dive into the specifics of this partnership approach after a quick break. So we were talking about that fine line between supporting a child's play and accidentally stifling their independence. The source we're looking at today really digs into this. It suggests kind of a shift from a mindset of managing their play to one of partnership.
Partnership. That's interesting. I usually think about like setting boundaries,
Mhm.
maybe suggesting activities, but partnership makes it sound more collaborative.
Exactly. And this source outlines a few core principles for this partnership approach.
Okay.
One of the key ideas is observation over intervention. Instead of jumping in to, fix or direct, we become more mindful observers, really tuning into what's happening in their play.
So less of the here's how you do it and more of the, I wonder what they're trying to achieve.
Right.
That sounds tough to resist, though, especially when you see them struggling.
It can be. But the source argues that by holding back, we give them space to problem solve independently,
Okay.
which builds those crucial cognitive skills. It even suggests dedicating 15 minutes a day to simply observing your child at play.
15 minutes.
Yeah, no interruptions, no directions, just pure observation.
I can see that being really eye-opening, almost like a mini research project into your own kid.
Yeah.
But what about those times when they clearly DO need help? Does this partnership mean never offering guidance?
Not at all. The source talks about support over direction. Instead of dictating how they should play, we offer support through open-ended questions
Okay.
and encouragement. For example, instead of saying, why don't you build the tower this way? You
Mm.
might ask, what do you think would make this tower more stable?
So it's about prompting their own problem solving
Right.
rather than like imposing our solutions on them. But how do we know what kind of support is the right kind? Each kid's so different.
That's where the observation piece comes in. By carefully watching how they play, what frustrates them, what excites them, we can kind of tailor our support to their individual needs
Okay.
and play styles.
So it's almost like becoming fluent in their personal play language
Mm-hmm.
before you try to have a conversation.
I like that analogy. And speaking of language, the source really emphasizes the importance of questions over answers. It's about sparking curiosity and critical thinking
Okay.
rather than just giving them the information.
So less lecturing, more engaging in like a genuine dialogue about their play. I can see how that would be more stimulating for them. But does this mean always holding back on explaining things?
Not necessarily. It's about finding a balance. Sometimes they might genuinely need information or clarification.
Right.
But by prioritizing questions over those quick answers, we encourage them to become like active thinkers and problem solvers.
This is really making me rethink how I interact with my kids during playtime. It's almost like a whole new parenting philosophy.
It really is. And the final principle the source emphasizes is process over product.
Process over product.
Yeah, this means shifting our focus from the end result of their play
Okay.
to the process itself.
Yeah.
It's about celebrating their effort, creativity, and problem-solving strategies, regardless of whether they, succeed in the traditional sense.
That makes a lot of sense. It's so easy to get caught up in whether they built the tallest tower
Right.
or colored perfectly within the lines. But this reminds us that the real learning, the real magic, is happening during the process itself.
Exactly. And speaking of celebrating the process, the source has some interesting thoughts on how to create a play environment that truly supports this partnership approach.
Okay, this is where I need help. I've got the toys, I've got the playroom.
Uh-huh.
What am I missing? How do we make this environment conducive to that, like, partner dynamic?
The source stresses the importance of offering a variety of materials that appeal to, like, different interests and developmental needs. Think blocks, art supplies, puzzles, dolls, costumes, basically anything that sparks their imagination and encourages um, open-ended play.
So less about having the right educational toy,
Right.
more about providing a diverse toolbox for their creativity.
Exactly. And it's not just about quantity. The source suggests regularly rotating the toys.
Rotating.
Yeah, to keep things fresh and stimulating. You can even involve your child in this process, letting them choose which toys they'd like to have out at any given time.
That's a great idea. Gives them a sense of ownership over their space. But what about the physical space itself? Any tips on designing a play area that fosters this sense of exploration and partnership?
The source suggests thinking about the space in terms of invitation and possibility.
Okay.
Create cozy nooks for quiet play, open areas for movement and large-scale construction,
Gotcha.
and, like, designated areas for art and creative expression. The key is to encourage free movement and exploration.
It sounds like you're describing a, like, play wonderland, a space where their imaginations can run wild. But we don't all have mansions with dedicated playrooms. Any tips for those of us with more, limited space?
Absolutely. Even in a smaller space, you can create zones for different types of play.
Okay.
Use furniture to define areas,
Yeah.
utilize vertical space with shelves or hanging organizers,
Mm-hmm.
and think about how natural light and color can enhance the environment.
So it's about being creative and making the most of what you have,
Right.
regardless of square footage.
Exactly. And don't forget about the power of nature. Whether it's the backyard, a park, or a nearby hiking trail,
Yeah.
encourage your child to spend time outdoors. Nature offers endless opportunities for exploration, discovery, and, like, unstructured play.
That's a good reminder. Sometimes the best play environments are the ones we don't have to create ourselves.
And beyond the physical environment, the source emphasizes the importance of creating a, like, supportive emotional atmosphere.
Oh.
This means setting clear boundaries and expectations so children feel safe and secure.
Boundaries make sense. But how do we make sure those boundaries don't feel, like, restrictive or stifling?
It's about finding that balance between structure and freedom. Clearly communicate what's allowed and what's not.
Okay.
But within those boundaries, give them the autonomy to make choices, explore their interests, and direct their own play.
So it's like giving them the scaffolding they need to build their own creative structures.
Exactly. And the supportive atmosphere also involves celebrating their effort,
Okay.
creativity, and unique approaches to play.
Mm.
Resist the urge to compare them to others or focus on the end result. Instead, acknowledge their effort, their persistence, and the joy they bring to the process.
This is all so helpful. I feel like I'm already starting to see play in a whole new light.
Right.
But what about those specific moments during play?
Uh-huh.
Are there certain things we can say or do to really foster this, like, partnership dynamic?
There are. And the source offers some really practical strategies for engaging with our children during play.
So we've been talking about how to approach our kids' play in a whole new way. It's not just about, letting them loose with the toy box. It's about becoming active partners in their exploration.
Exactly. And before the break, you asked about specific things we can do during playtime to really put this partnership into action. Well, the source offers some really practical communication strategies that can make a huge difference.
Okay, I'm all ears. We talked about asking questions, but are there other ways we can, like, engage with them while they're in the midst of creating their own little worlds?
One technique the source highlights is called descriptive commentary.
Descriptive commentary.
Yeah, it's about narrating what we observe as they play, almost like a sportscaster describing the action.
Okay.
But instead of focusing on winning or losing, we describe their choices, their actions, even their thought processes, if we can kind of glean them.
So instead of saying something generic like, good job building,
Right.
we're giving them a more detailed, like, play-by-play.
Exactly. For example, if a child is building a block tower, you might say, wow, you're carefully choosing each block and testing its placement. that tower is getting really tall.
So we're acknowledging their process, not just the final product. I can see how this would make them feel like seen and heard, like their efforts are being recognized.
That's exactly right. And what's interesting is that this type of descriptive commentary also helps kids become more aware of their own actions and decisions. It's like we're holding up a mirror to their play, helping them see themselves as, capable agents in their own learning.
I can even see this being helpful for like language development. By
Hmm.
using that rich descriptive language, we're indirectly expanding their vocabulary and helping them connect words with actions.
Absolutely. And as they get older, we can weave in more complex language to reflect their, growing understanding of the world. Instead of just describing what they're doing, we can start to comment on the strategies they're using, the challenges they're facing, or the emotions they're expressing.
Okay, so we've got descriptive commentary. What are some other like conversational tools we can use during playtime?
The source reminds us of the power of open-ended questions, something we touched on earlier. Instead of asking questions with a simple yes or no answer, we ask questions that invite them to think critically, explain their reasoning, and consider different perspectives.
So less of the do you want to play with blocks
Right.
and more of the what kind of amazing structure are you dreaming up with those blocks
You
today?
got it. Open-ended questions invite them to become active participants in the conversation, rather than passive recipients of information.
But what if they give like a one-word answer or seem resistant to elaborate? Should we push them to explain themselves?
Not necessarily. Remember, play is supposed to be enjoyable. We don't want to turn it into an interrogation. Sometimes, a simple acknowledgement of their response is enough. For example, if they say, "I'm building a castle," you could simply reply, "A castle, how exciting, I can't wait to see it."
So it's about striking that balance between like encouraging deeper thinking and respecting their pace and communication style.
Exactly. And sometimes, the most powerful thing we can do is simply validate their feelings and efforts.
We talked about validation earlier, but I'd love to like dig into that a little more. What are some specific phrases or approaches that really convey that sense of validation during play?
It starts with simply acknowledging their emotions. If they're struggling with a puzzle and getting frustrated, you might say, "I see you're really working hard on that." It can be frustrating when things don't fit together right away.
Just hearing that their feelings are understood can make such a difference, right?
Absolutely. It shows them that we're not dismissing their struggles, but rather acknowledging them as a natural part of the learning process.
And it also models empathy, which is such an important social emotional skill for them to develop.
Exactly. And beyond acknowledging their emotions, we can also validate their effort and creativity. For example, if they proudly show us a drawing, instead of just saying, "That's beautiful," we might say, "Wow, look at all the details you included. You put so much thought into this."
So we're being specific in our praise,
Yeah,
highlighting those aspects of their play that we genuinely appreciate.
exactly. It shows them that we're paying attention, not just offering those generic compliments. And just as important as what we say is what we don't say. The source emphasizes the importance of avoiding comparisons.
Ah, yes, the comparison trap. I think we've all fallen into that one at some point. It's so easy to say things like, look how nicely your sister built her tower, or why can't you color inside the lines like your brother?
Mm.
But I know those comparisons can be so damaging.
They really can. They undermine a child's self-esteem and create a sense of competition rather than collaboration. Every child is unique, and their play should be celebrated for its individuality.
So instead of comparing them to others, we should be focusing on their individual progress and celebrating their like unique strengths.
Exactly. And remember, this partnership approach extends beyond our words. Our actions speak volumes, and children are incredibly perceptive.
Mhm.
If we're constantly hovering, correcting their every move, or dictating how they should play, they're likely to feel stifled and discouraged.
So how do we strike that balance between being involved, but also giving them space to explore independently?
It comes down to trust.
Trust.
Yeah, trust that they are capable learners, trust that they can figure things out on their own, and trust that their play is valuable, even when it's, messy, chaotic, or seemingly unproductive.
That's a powerful message. It reminds me something we discussed earlier, this idea of shifting our focus from the product to the process. It's about letting go of our need to control the outcome and trusting that the real learning is happening in the midst of their exploration.
Exactly. And speaking of capturing those moments of exploration, remember that idea of a play story journal we mentioned earlier?
Oh, yes, that's something I really want to hear more about. It sounds like such a beautiful way to document and celebrate their play.
It really is. The source suggests thinking of this journal as a collection of stories, not just, a log of behaviors.
Okay.
We capture those moments that stand out, the ones that reveal something about their personality, their interests, or their unique way of seeing the world.
So it's less about recording data points and more about preserving those little glimpses into their inner world.
Exactly. We use vivid language, sensory details, even direct quotes from our child to bring these play stories to life.
And I imagine these journals become like incredible keepsakes, something they might even enjoy looking back on themselves someday.
Absolutely. It's a way to honor their play, celebrate their growth, and preserve those precious moments of childhood that might otherwise fade with time.
This has been such an enriching conversation. I feel like I've gained a whole new toolkit for understanding and supporting my children's play. I'm excited to put these ideas into practice and see what new discoveries, we make together.
And remember, it's an ongoing journey. There will be moments of frustration, moments of doubt, but ultimately, this partnership approach is about fostering a deeper connection with our children and empowering them to become confident, capable, and joyful learners.
Beautifully said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and insights. I know our listeners are going to walk away from this with a renewed appreciation for the power of play and the importance of their role as partners in their children's growth.
It's been my pleasure. Until next time, keep playing, keep exploring, and keep believing in the magic of childhood.
That's a great reminder for all of us. Thanks for joining us on this journey, and we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.